What up, everybody? Blaze One Sports reporting here on Anderson Silva versus Julio Ceaser Chavez Jr. Professional boxing match took place a couple nights ago. It was an 8-round pro belt. Took place in Jalisco, Guadalajara, Mexico. Silva is the 46-year-old. Chavez is 35. And Silva is the former MMA champion, former UFC champion, former, or you could say, the GOAT of MMA. If you've watched his fights and you followed him, he's always had good hands and good boxing skills. So I knew Anderson would stand a chance in any boxing match. Years ago, when Anderson was the UFC champion, there was talks of Anderson Silva was supposed to fight Roy Jones Jr. Both fighters were pretty much in their prime, and it would have been a good fight. Roy Jones Jr. most likely would have won, but Anderson Silva has the same fighting style as Roy Jones Jr., where he's the counter puncher. He likes to bait the opposing fighter, and he's got excellent movement, foot movement, head movement. And if you know Anderson Silva and you've followed him, watched his fights, you know he's got good hands, he's got good boxing skills. And some don't know, but this is actually Anderson Silva's third professional boxing match. Years ago, he had two boxing matches. He won one and lost one. So this is his third match. He's now 3-1 professional boxer. I don't think Silva can make like a WBO or WBC championship run, but he definitely could give problems to a lot of these legends that are fighting, like Anderson versus Roy Jones Jr. now. I don't think that would be such a good fight because Roy Jones didn't look too good. Maybe Anderson versus Tyson, or Jake Paul still wants to fight. Let him fight Anderson, and Anderson would most likely smash him. I don't know if Anderson has a knockout power, but we'll see. Chavez Jr., he missed weight for this fight. He is now 52-6. Chavez Jr., his really two main big name opponents are Canelo and Daniel Jacobs, which he lost both of them. Other than that, Chavez Jr. really hasn't fought anybody. He's got kind of a padded record. His career is kind of like questionable. There's a lot of stuff going on with his career, like a lot of questionable stuff. So with him missing weight, it was like nothing surprising. But Anderson pretty much dominated Chavez the whole fight. Chavez was coming forward, and landing some punches of his own, but Anderson Silva landed threw 392 punches, and Chavez Jr. only threw 153 punches. So Silva was the busier fighter. Like I said, Silva looked really good. He had really good movement, head movement, foot movement. His punch speed was looking good. He was in and out. He was landing some shots on Chavez Jr. and he hit him with a good uppercut a couple times. Chavez, kept on looking at the ref for help. And, Chavez Jr. should have won the fight because he's the professional boxer with over 50 victories. 52-6. He was 52-5 at the time. He should have beat the MMA fighter who was 3-1. So basically, the 52-5 fighter lost to the 2-1 fighter. Like I said, Anderson Silva looked good. Chavez Jr. should have won on paper, I guess, but Anderson Silva won by by split decision. It should have been unanimous decision, but split decision. Chavez Jr. felt like he won. What do you guys think? Anyone else watch this fight? It was a decent fight. It was way better, with all the celebrity fights going on. Even though, I guess you could kind of call this a celebrity fight, even though it's two professional athletes, but from different sports, almost similar sports, but different. This is definitely the best fight out of all of them. Like out of all the Jake Paul fights and all this and that, Mayweather, this fight was actually good. Anderson dominated, and like I said, Chavez should have won because his record, the professional boxer, but Anderson ended up winning. So, what do you guys think? Anybody else watch the fight? Who do you guys think won? Do you guys think Anderson Silva looked good? Do you think he could still box? Go on, have a couple more boxing matches? What about Chavez Jr.? This should be it for him. Thoughts, comments, questions, opinions in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Anderson Silva versus Chavez Jr. Out.